me. My name is Nick Haas. I'm one of the co-founders here at MaintainX. Work with a lot of our enterprise clients and driving strategic initiatives. I lead our MaintainX community. If you haven't had a chance to see that yet, definitely check it out. We'll have a link at the end to go look at it. I work with, you may have met me at an industry event. If you've attended any conferences or trade shows, I'm actually at the Advanced Manufacturing Expo in Grand Rapids today. And I work in helping develop a lot of digital transformation strategies for a lot of Fortune 500 folks as well. So it's an honor and privilege to be here with you all today. Without further ado, I want to pass it over here to Matt to introduce himself and go from there.
So hi, everyone. My name is Matt Bartman. I live in Wisconsin. I work for US LBM. For those who don't know who US LBM is, we're a building materials supplier and manufacturer. We are nationwide, and there's actually a pretty good chance that we have a location probably not too far from where you're at, unless you're outside of the standard 48. But yeah, so my role with the company is I'm the manufacturing operations manager. It's a national role, and I support about over 60 manufacturing plants to help drive efficiency and growth, support quality initiatives. It's a big multi-plant network, so we do a lot of best practice sharing. And yeah, I really focus on, just like the slide says, they're creating cultures of collaboration and support. I spend a lot of time building infrastructure to support plant performance and also really try to make life easier and give the tools to be able to be really impactful for plant managers. That's a big part of my focus. And then, as always, just like any, especially operations driven role, is to deliver measurable results, right? So that's a little bit about the role I have with the company, a little bit about the company. And I guess, yeah, I'm an open book. If there's anything you guys want to know, I'm happy to share. But yeah, that's a bit about me.
Fantastic. Thanks, Matt. Good intro. And excited to have you here. So we're going to jump into the live Q&A piece here. I'll stop sharing so we can focus the audience on us here for a moment. But yeah, before we jump into some of the questions, I know you've got, I'd love the audience to get to know a little bit more about you as well. You've had an interesting journey and path to becoming an operational leader in the manufacturing world. So yeah, can you talk a little bit about that journey?
Yeah, for sure. So I won't bore you with the long version. I'll give you guys a shorter version. So I would like to say, though, first, the success I've had, I'm not a self-made man. I've had some really great and patient mentors along the way. I've been able to work with some really talented folks and whatnot. So I got to put the big disclaimer on some of the successes that I've had in my role. But funny enough, for those who know me, if there's any US LBMers on the call right now, a lot of people know me as an operationally focused guy, right? I'm very into operations, process improvement, so on and so forth. But I actually started out part of my professional career in sales. I was selling web-based compliance tools for JJ Keller. That's where I learned how to solution sell. For those who don't know about solution selling, it's an incredible tool, and I recommend it to everyone because every job is sales at the end of the day. And anyways, I was doing sales there, and I worked in operations previously to that role, but I was kind of missing it. And business to business cold calling it'll wear you out. It's a tough job. And so anyways, around 2013, I joined Wisconsin Building Supply, which is one of our subdivisions of US LBM. I worked in operations, did just about everything you can in operations from the ground level. And I just kind of worked my way up from there, doing deliveries, working forklift, became a crane operator, was a CDL trucker, did a bunch of other various operations things, logistics, so on and so forth. Anyways, around that time, I got really into continuous improvement methodologies and continuous improvement, thinking and tools and so on and so forth. I found it fun. I found systems thinking and design to be just an incredible experience. And I, had a little bit of talent at it. So around 2017, there was a regional role open for doing continuous improvement for full time. I thought it was awesome. I went for it. 5 interviews later and a lot of nail biting, I got it. So I was super pumped. I jumped right into that role. I did that for a number of years. That was really focused on building continuous improvement cultures and then really improving business processes and performance, right? and that was in distribution, retail, and manufacturing. And then with my background in manufacturing, distribution, retail, compliance, sales, and technology, I was in a really good spot to be able to make a good impact. And like I said, I worked with some really great folks. We're very open-minded to trying things different ways. And so we went for it. We ran tons of projects across the region. I ran and mentored hundreds of projects, taught, continuous improvement projects, built and taught classes on continuous improvement, built enterprise-wide continuous improvement strategies, and really learned a lot, met a lot of really great people, and had a good time with it. And then about, let's see, I think 4 years ago, I was asked to strictly focus on manufacturing. And instead of a region, I would be covering the whole nation. And so I went for it. I love manufacturing. I'm a manufacturing geek to my heart. And I was getting really good results in manufacturing, good traction in my region. So like I said, I'm 100% in. And then over the years, my role has expanded. And kind of like that slide was talking about, it's not just focused on continuous improvement projects. I do a lot of other things as well. And building infrastructure has honestly been a lot of what I've been doing lately and trying to manage that infrastructure. But yeah, that's kind of my Cliff Notes version of where I got to my role today.
That's super cool. I think it's a fun thing to be able to share some of the journey, because it's not always as linear as it may appear.
Oh, I know. It was a zigzag. Like I didn't even go that far back, right? It gets even crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. I think one thing that's definitely stands out as far as your background is your ability is that sales background, because you called it out right there. And I tell folks like this all the time. I tell this to operational leaders all the time, is you ever, even if your title doesn't say sales, you're having to sell your projects and your initiatives to other folks and get them to buy in to support you, because you can't do it all on your own. And so I think that background has been a big factor to your success, as far as being able to communicate sort of how to get folks to buy into it and believe in your vision.
Sorry, I mean to interrupt.
No, you're good. You're good. Yeah.
I would say like a good sales program teaches you how to listen. So that's the key thing right there. And anyways, yeah, I couldn't agree more. That it sounds like I know a dirty word for some folks, sales, but it actually does give you a good foundation.
I love it. Well, in the spirit of listening, I mean, what were some of the pain points and things that you were hearing that led you to sort of think we should go get a unified CMMS across our national network? What were you sort of seeing that led you to kind of think this is an area to focus my time on and energy on?
Yeah. So US LBM, though it's only about 15 years old, we have some businesses that are over 100 in our portfolio. Yeah, we're a conglomeration of companies. So you can look us up on our website. But a lot of different companies. We've grown very fast, a lot of it through acquiring companies and whatnot, and then some greenfields as well. And when you grow that fast, and when you're pulling in so many different companies, methodologies, leadership, so on and so forth, there's a million different ways to do something. So the reason we went for a CMMS is kind of like twofold. On one side, you always have the performance, right? Like it always got to be focused on performance, right? Business is a competitive game. So, there's the obvious straightforward things on terms of a CMMS, right? Like we're maximizing uptime, maximizing capacity, improving safety and asset lifespan, asset utilization, those types of things, right? So there's like the brass tacks of it. Like we got to maximize everything we can. But then the other side has to do with that standardization, where we, to some degree, needed some standardization across our company with these different types of things. And a CMMS is a great spot to do that, right? Like knowing what assets you have across the whole company in a clear, concise list that doesn't have to be generated every time you want it to go try and find it. That's really helpful, right? Like how much capital is spent on assets is incredible. So it makes sense that you'd want something to keep it running, be able to manage it, and as well as looking for like global communication tools in terms of asset management. And so that was also something we were looking for in terms of a CMMS, just because if there's actually to rewind a little bit, since we are a very distributed manufacturing network, we don't really have super plants. We have a lot of some really small plants and some larger plants, and they're kind of speckled throughout the United States. And that means we have a lot of the same equipment. Like there's a specific type of equipment that we might buy 5 or 6 of them in a year and put them at different plants, and maybe even more, right? And so when we have changes as well, or we have improvements we design on those pieces of equipment to improve the safety or something like that, we also wanted something to be able to communicate to everybody, hey, everybody who has this piece of equipment, please make these upgrades. Here's the best practice we found. We found a nip point. We need to fix that. And so that was another reason that we're kind of looking for. So it was like performance, standardization, and I guess also a global communication kind of network strategy.
Yeah. No, it makes a lot of sense. And now I've talked to quite a few folks who get to this stage of realization that they kind of think this is maybe an answer to help solve some of these things. But it's one thing to come to that conclusion, and it's another thing to roll it out across 40 plus facilities, get started, get the ball rolling. Talk to people. Tell us a little bit about how did you go from that conclusion of, okay, we should probably go down this path, to we're starting, we're going. Talk about that coalition building and what that looked like.
Yeah. So to rewind a little bit, when we started the process, we did also make sure when we were, doing the business analysis on the front end, that we had a cross-functional group help us choose our CMMS of operators, various levels of the company, just because we wanted to really make sure we picked the right tool. And I can talk more about that later. But the nice part about that is I knew that after looking at about 7 different CMMS providers, from custom solutions to out of the box, that, honestly, MaintainX was the best one. I really liked them. I can't speak highly enough about it. So the good part is we knew we had a good tool, right? And implementation is a lot easier when you actually have something really cool to give everybody. It's a bit of a bummer when you don't have, right? Or it's bad news you have to give everybody. But this was actually something where, hey, there's a lot of need for this. Some people are asking for it. And we chose something, I think, in the best way possible, which is doing it in a collaborative way. So we had that foundation set. But then in terms of the tactical, all right, how are we going to roll this thing out? So I've implemented software a couple different times, and truth be told, I've made some mistakes. I've done some things right, but I've noticed when you have a gigantic network, having just a one flip the switch day where everything goes live, it can work. It does work for some software, but I've found that doing it in more of an iterative model tends to work a little bit better, just because when you do the open the floodgate, you have a ton of support you have to have ready to be able to do this process, right? Like all the questions we're going to get in, all the work on the front end too, you're going to spend a ton of time collecting all these assets, getting all your procedures built out. Like there's all this work on the front end that would have taken a while anyways. So instead of essentially, jumping back to manufacturing theory, instead of just batch processing it in one massive chunk, we did it in smaller chunks where we do it between 3 to 5 sites a month. And that allows us to do a couple of really cool things. So like I said, the word iteration, I am a big believer that if you're iterating, you're learning, and that way you can improve that process. It hedges your bets against if something doesn't quite go right. If you go live with everybody at one stint and you did something incorrectly, but your life is over. You're going to be answering emails until the cows come home. But if you do it in an iterative model, then you can go, okay, we implemented 3. What do we do right? What do we do wrong? Okay, you make your tweaks. Next one comes through. Okay, what do we do right? What do we do wrong? And you just can keep doing this process. And then also users who are live then can just start using the tool, giving you feedback. It's much more it's useful, right? Like you can use the tool right away versus having them wait to use the tool as you're paying for the tool to then make the tool go live. I think just get it in people's hands. Something that we really focused on too was making sure not to roll out, even at those sites, every function within MaintainX. So we go, okay, we want work orders are kind of like the heart of the tool. At least that's the way I see it. It kind of drives everything else, right? So if you can get work orders into people's hands in a good way, then everything else will start to work its way out a little bit better. It's kind of the foundation. Yeah. So what we did.
What's a for instance of something you maybe kept out of that from the start? What's a for instance of something that you kept out from the beginning for the sake of maybe making it simple?
Honestly, parts and reporting. I was focused on assets, users, procedures, because then you can make work orders. And once you have that ability, then you can cycle back through and go, okay, let's get your parts in. Just because parts can get pretty messy, right? Like some shops, and you might have $1 million in parts sitting in a somewhere, right? And they not even tracked, right? So it would have delayed the rest of the implementations as well. So it's kind of like this. Step one is get that into people's hands. Step two is go back. Once people are more familiar with the parts, like I love all the other functionality in the tool, but I really was, what's the 20% of the tool that's going to give us the 80% of our impact? And I think that was what I really wanted to focus on, because I would have built this other part. Some folks might have not even used it and kept it up to date, so we would have had to change it again anyways. So I guess really to bring it back to your question, it's do it in digestible chunks. It fits into schedules. You can iterate. It leaves a good feeling in people's a good taste in their mouth, right? When the implementation goes smooth, right? We figured out everything we can take off their hands. People also understand if they put their hands up first, when you have a big multi-site essentially roll up to do, that you go, hey, you guys are getting the freshest, newest version of this. I need feedback, right? Like, give me what's working, what's not working with it too. And then they're also, you're leveraging their ability to do the same thing or be able to get in, use it, right, and help you out. So that's been, I guess, our strategy and some of our tactics in terms of at least how I've been thinking about implementations of software.
Sure. I mean, it sounds really logical, frankly. Like it's clean. It's easy to follow. I know there are so many folks who try to get caught up in making everything perfect with all of the advanced things they want out of the gate, and then they get kind of stuck on the failure to launch moment where they're not, they think they need to dial everything in to the future state that they think that they need to have in a year or two, and I think you just laid out a good case for they get it in their hands, start with that foundational piece, and then gives you something to build on rather than getting caught up in maybe some of the finer points that can slow a whole project down or burn the energy and momentum you have against you. And so when you think about like balancing that need for consistency and standardization versus giving them operational flexibility, because I'm sure every site does things, they've got all the companies you acquire, they do things a little bit differently, maybe there's some similarities, but maybe there's some unique elements or characteristics. How did you manage that before MaintainX, and then how do you think about that with MaintainX in place?
Yeah. So before MaintainX, there was a lot of different ways people were managing their maintenance, like within that, if we're just going to focus on that specific realm. And, some folks weren't doing anything really. They were just kind of like, hey, yeah, Bob knows how to do this. He's been doing it forever. Just let him go. And then some sites had CMMS, in place where they were looking to get a CMMS. So those were, we had the whole range of it there, right? In terms of people were ready to get, ready, knew what to do. And then some sites were really fresh to this, which is also one of the reasons to step back a bit while I'm giving small chunks as well. I want everybody to be comfortable with it. Humans use software, right? So we have to take the emotional element into to be respectful of it, right? As far as like the balance between standardization and not standardizing things, I've thought a lot about this topic just because when it comes to improving processes and operational performance, you kind of have these dual things you have to balance. On one hand, you need standardization because standardization gives predictable outcomes, right? That's why we do it, right? We want to know that we have a recipe that will deliver, chocolate chip cookies, right? So it takes away a lot of the guesswork, a lot of the experimentation from it to get a predictable outcome. But on the flip side, you don't want to be so standardized that it's like you're holding on so tight that it's like suffocating the process. So what we needed to do right out of the gates was get a good balance between standardization to get the information we needed and be able to, for instance, have unified asset lists, be able to have some procedures to get them right out of the gate going, those types of things. But I didn't want to give any more standardization than what we needed, because on the flip side of having a bunch of different plants who've been doing things a lot of different ways, one of our strengths as a company I see is that we do have a lot of people who have built these businesses from the ground up and they know what they're doing. And I think it'd be a disservice to us and them to not take into account the fact that when you don't standardize some things, it gives you kind of the room for serendipity to be able to find new ways to do a practice, right? To be able to create a new system, a new tool, a new way to do something. And then with all of our different sites, we can bubble that up as a best practice and we can share that with others. So that's my thoughts on it. It's almost like a Venn diagram of like, you've got standardization on the other end, you've got essentially kind of like open source, if you kind of want to think about it. And you're trying to like just overlap them just enough that it gives you everything you need to run the business successfully, but not anything more than that, right? You don't want to be too constricting. I think that's a pretty consistent theme, right? You want to have, I want both, right? I want creativity and innovation, and I also want to be able to drive standardization. So that's how I think about it.
That's clever, and I guess that I have a feeling that sort of helped tie into how you drove adoption by saying that we didn't give them such a tight guardrail that didn't fit the way they did business. But I mean, what were some of the other sort of tactics or approaches you did to get people to buy in and kind of go along with the plan? Or was it just an iron fist where you said you do this or you lose your job?
No. I think iron fist gets compliance, but it doesn't get like a person's like heart and drive to want to actually do something. So what we did is so like tactically, I would be more specific with some of it. Asset naming conventions are locked down, right? Like that is something that if you want to change, you essentially have to go through an administrator, just because when we have be able to pull a whole list, I need to know, like, because everybody was calling things relatively the same thing. Some people didn't. And so instead of like, for instance, like say you have a saw, instead of saying saw one, I'm going to have 60 saw ones if I pulled a list like that. What we did instead is we made it a unique identifier hyphen OEM hyphen model hyphen. That way it's pretty straightforward. You could be
logical.
It wants to call it, right? Yeah, we call that saw one. Fantastic. Like one of our manufacturers that we use is like MyTech, right? So it'd be it'd be blade, saw one. It's a MyTech blade saw, right? And then we did look to remove any redundant words. That way, if they saw, hey, we call it blade saw one, we don't just have blade saw twice in the title. But that was one of the parts where I needed to be, I guess, like the strictest and have to lock it down the most. And just because, I needed that. As far as like procedures and whatnot, we do generate those and then hand them out. But then the sites do have the flexibility to change them later. And I'm hoping they do. I'm hoping they see something where, as we're going through manuals, but maybe something isn't as good in the manual as what we found users to do, and then they can improve their own procedures. So it is pretty relaxed in that regard. It's just more so make sure you're doing at least this as a bare minimum. Please build on top of it if you'd like. And honestly, we haven't had to like do the iron fist or anything like that thus far. It's I know a lot of the plant managers. We have good relationships across the company. Like I was saying before, humans use technology, right? And businesses are made of people. So I think that's, if you have a good relationship with the folks that you're trying to legitimately give the good tool to, it honestly works itself out. There's really no like trick there, right? It's just being genuine and helping them out.
I love that. It's I know that's definitely one of the challenges when you see those folks that do go and maybe iterate. How do you think about reincorporating that into, maybe if it's something that's maybe a best practice that could be applied globally versus something that's unique to one location or one process? How do you sort of take that feedback and apply it in the spirit of standardization and
So with that type of thing, usually people will reach out and ask questions, especially because the tool is newer, on how to change something. And that does give me a little bit of a like, oh, someone might have a cool idea, and I ask them about it. And if I find it, then I'll put it into our gold standard, essentially, so the next rollout gets it. As because we're doing this iterative rollout, right? We're almost done. We're at like 90%. We've been doing it over like a year and a half now. We've had sites on it for a while now too. And the idea would be then, once we have more of these, we could potentially get people together. We do have the MaintainX office hours call that we host internally as well for people to ask questions and share. To your guys' credit, by the way, ideas that we've brought up on there, you have built into the tool. So that's been pretty cool. So we've been getting direct user feedback, and you guys were very receptive to it. So that also drives adoption, right? Because if someone's giving you feedback on like, hey, how can we change this? That means they're using it, or they want to use it, right?
Right.
But as far as like distributing it across the company, I know you guys have some of the global tools you've been building out. that right there would be
Mhm.
where you can push that out. A lot of the time right now, I just I reach out to folks. It's very, you know, it's not systematized in this regard yet, just because I want to see what we have going on. What does that process
Still
look
learning.
like? Compare it to the other one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then be able to hand that out to folks as they deem it necessary. So, um,
Yeah.
yeah, and then build more infrastructure around that too, as more and more users are getting into the tool every single day and whatnot.
I love that. And I like that this idea that, you know, yeah, you're seeing good progress and good results, but you're also still like we're still learning from your
Oh
customers
yeah,
or your users, saying this isn't, you know, and being open to changing that. I think there's a lot of fear that sometimes people have that they have to have all the answers before they
oh
go
yeah,
out and do it, and it can kind of get them, you know, slow them down, or maybe they lose confidence that that they know what they're how to approach it. So I think it's good for people to
yeah.
hear that you're still, you know, actively engaging and trying to understand what can we do to make this more
Oh
effective for
yeah.
you all, or get those ideas. Yeah.
Yeah, that'll never end too, just to be clear, right? Like that is like
Yeah.
at the heart of how you make something better is you keep coming back
Yeah.
to it. And I think the idea is if anybody out there is feeling self-conscious about implementing and whatnot, just be confident in your skills to be able to implement it. But you don't have to be confident you have all the answers, right? Like you're figuring this out together, right? You're working with sites. You're trying to build something really cool together, right? Like that's actually what you're trying to accomplish. So you don't have to know everything. Just know enough that you're able to do a good job, right? Like you don't want to just like there's a balance there, right? You don't want the day one surgeon,
Yeah.
um but yeah, so that at least be confident in your tools and your process. If you've implemented software before, obviously, if you haven't, talk to someone who has, right? Or right now we're
Yeah.
talking about it. Just do some of the things that we're talking about. But yeah, just be confident that you can figure it out.
I love it. And where do you find inspiration on how to like improve your operations outside of your own team and the folks that you work with? What are some of the places that I think, or companies, organizations, things that you look up to?
Yeah. So anyone who works in the building materials industry, I'm going to say something, and they are probably going to laugh, but the industry is not exactly like the fastest to adopt new technology. It's an old industry, right? Like, and that's actually it's got a nice patina because of that. It's one of the things I actually like about our industry is it's kind of slow to get going on some things, but once it's in on it, they're in 100%, right? And they'll do their best
Mm.
with whatever it is. So if we're looking at like the parabola of adoption, right? Like we're not on the very front, like we're not, you know, essentially like implementing the newest technology and whatnot. But that's okay, right? We do tend to look for robust solutions, and I
Mm.
think that that's what gives us a little bit of time sometimes to takes a little bit. But yeah, so I guess yeah, that'd be probably the way at least I kind of approach it in terms of it's yeah, we're never at the front. We always take our time. And I guess kind of got a little bit off topic there. I guess reiterate anything I missed.
No, I think it's great. I think um, it's helpful to sort of have a context of, you know, you're not in an industry that's trying to find the bleeding edge of everything and trying it. You
Yeah,
did this methodically. You've gone through and been very thoughtful about it from every step, and it helped
yeah,
kind of, and your background and experience of having done some things like this before helped give you that confidence and that sort of framework to think about how to set this up and, um, get things going in the right direction, and have a successful implementation. And while you're still also have that open mind to recognize that there's still things to learn and things to adapt to,
yeah.
and understand how you can, continue to
You
be a
know,
good steward of that process.
as I was thinking to like answer your question more specifically. Sorry. Um,
Yeah.
but really, I guess the point I was trying to make is like there's a lot of options, right? Just because we're not so focused on always being on the bleeding edge of the knife.
Hmm.
So really, we look anywhere. So I guess that would be probably a better way to put that, right? Like, everybody is looking at different things, especially from different trade shows. You're looking at what other industries have been doing. It's honestly that, so to kind of bring it full circle with my long-winded answer there before,
Yeah. So
we're not the first, so we have a lot of options. We look around, we see what's good. If it's robust, we like it, we think it'll work, we try it. If something is a half solution, we don't. Like half solutions
yeah.
don't do well in our industry. And yeah, I think that'd probably be the best way to put it. I know I didn't give any like, oh yeah, we're looking at this specific company or anything like that, but
No,
or
I
giving us,
think that's part of the value of kind of understanding where people, because there's a lot of folks trying to figure out where do we learn from. The industries we serve and the folks we work with typically don't have a lot of they're not going to a lot of different companies, so they don't have a wide aperture and understanding of like what other organizations do. There's not a ton of collaboration in the industry outside of some of these trade shows and events, so it can kind of be difficult to figure out where do we go and learn. How do we who can we learn from, and figure out what's working and what's not working as well. So I think that's kind of a good point of view for folks to see, is that you're not just trying to see what are our direct competitors doing, and how do we just focus on them, but seeing what other adjacent industries are working on. So
yeah, open-minded, willing to try things, kind of thing.
yeah. Well, now that we have like you've got I think it's over 40 sites live now. What do you think are some of the initial wins? Like, how do you measure success from and results that you're able to showcase to leadership and say this is going in the right direction, or this is already proving value?
Yeah. So the first one would be that we actually have something in place. I know that sounds kind of funny,
Yeah.
right? But so the actual like the site has the access to the tool is actually one measurable where we're like, okay, we had nothing, we got something, that we're building this foundation, right? I keep using that word over and over, but that's truly what we're trying to do here. And
Yeah.
some of the other wins, honestly, looking at it more like culturally, that people are using the tool.
Mhm.
People are asking questions about it. They're showing up to the calls. They're thinking about ways to improve the tool. Like those are huge wins. Like I was discussing earlier, when someone comes to you with an idea on how to make the tool better, you're doing right. Like you're doing good.
Yeah.
So that's been another big
It's a
one.
culture win, really, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really like that one. And um, some of the folks too starting to use some of the dashboarding tools, like that's really great. Folks being mindful about users too, which I think is actually, it sounds like a very small win, but when they let you
Mhm.
know that somebody's gone and they need to replace, like, hey, that person left, I need to give access to this other person now. Like that's a huge win, because that means they're thinking about it and they're trying to make sure that it stays up to date, right? Versus someone leaves and the license just sits idle or gets taken out by an SSO environment and nobody is in the tool using it, right? So big difference between those two things. So those are some big results that we've been pretty pumped about. I know over the long term, we'll get even better into the dashboards and everything like that, building out custom dashboards for every location to the degree that they want them. Like more, like mean time to repair. Honestly, at the end of the day, too, helping drive OEE in some way, especially
Yeah.
once we have on like the productivity side, more on system or on machine systems that can read the performance of the machine without voiding warranties and plays nice with every other IT system and whatnot. Once we have those and they're also affordable and you can slap them onto thousands of machines, then I also think that would be like the next evolution where we
Yeah.
now have MaintainX can essentially help provide us with what is on, what's running, what's not running, notify us when something does go offline, right? Like I think that's like the next level in terms of almost having like an automatically generated OEE. Like that's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
So like when you talk about these results, when you were starting the project, you had to position it, to probably somebody on the finance side or someone who's overseeing budgets to just say, hey, and they're like, hey, Matt, what's the ROI of this going to be? Was that culture element part of that ROI conversation? Did you have other sort of business metrics that you brought in, or how did you kind of approach those questions? If you, I assume you got some degree of pushback there. What would your answer have been back then, or maybe how would you have changed it based on what you've seen today?
I'll be honest, like completely transparent with you. I didn't have to do too much of that. It was I didn't get any pushback just because for the tool is very affordable, right? Like it doesn't cost an arm and a leg. And on top of that, anything that improves productivity, easy sell, right? Like if it improves productivity, improves asset lifespan, improves safety, like that's that, for a pretty reasonable cost, like um that's the thing kind of sells itself there. But really at the
Yeah.
stage of some of the things in our company on the manufacturing side that we've been trying to build is just building that infrastructure, right? So
Right.
that has been that's honestly kind of a theme on a lot of our projects. So it's not uncommon for someone who approves a project to see something like that. And it already had a lot of folks going, "Oh, this is really cool. We should do something like this." My boss, he was really down on it. He really loved the idea. He came from a company that had a more developed, preventative maintenance system across the company and whatnot. So he already knew the value, and he was able to, talk that all the way up the chain, nice and easy. So, truth be told, yeah, I didn't have to do any magic with
That
it.
was an area that you had a lot of
This is-
friction
this,
because,
yeah, it was pretty
yeah,
straightforward in this regard.
and if you didn't know the answer to a lot of your baseline numbers, it was like those are numbers we should be able to know. We should know where we stand on a lot of
Yeah.
these points, and that kind of helped build the case for it.
Longer term, like what I talked about with like OEE and everything like that, though, longer term, I do want to show that using this tool does improve productivity, right? Like that is the long term play that improves safety and productivity. And I think that'll be really great too, then, because then you can start tying it to actual dollars, which is always nice whenever you have any tool or any system or anything like that.
Sure. Yeah. A couple questions I have here from the audience. I want to try to just chime in with you
Yeah.
quick. Is like, did you someone asked if you considered other CMMSs, and that maybe made the final round, and why
Yeah.
you chose MaintainX overall?
Yeah. So I can't remember every single one, but we were looking at Fix, we were looking at e-maintenance, we were looking at a custom solution. We obviously looked at you guys. I want to say we looked at Fleetio. We looked at, I think there was one or two more. I'm trying to remember. Oh, Aptura. And we looked at all those with our cross-functional group that I was talking about. And we had our criteria, right? We did classic business analyst, defining requirements, weighting those requirements, so on and so forth. And everybody essentially could grade on those requirements, every demo we did on the things that were most important to us. And that was I guess, like some of the process we went through. And then MaintainX, though, took the cake. We were really looking at e-maintenance, made it to the end of the process, and Fix did pretty good as well. We learned about MaintainX a little bit later in our process, so we threw them in real quick. But then it was like slam dunk. Like it was like, okay, this is everything we're looking for. Scheduling tool. The team was super responsive. Like I can't speak highly enough about that. We have a very lengthy IT essentially form that companies have to fill out to be able to be approved for our environment. And some of the other providers, it took them like multiple reminders or 3 weeks to get it back to us, or 2 weeks. MaintainX had it done within 24 hours. They were, boom, here you go. We want your business, right? Every time I ask questions, fast, really, really quick back to it. I also, the interface, e-maintenance had a lot of really cool stuff. It's a good program, but I noticed that all the functionality we wanted was in MaintainX, and it was cleaner. It was clear what the tool provided. It, you can jump in and not even do the training, and you get start using it pretty easy, So that was something that we really liked. And yeah, so we looked at a handful of them, and we analyzed them, demoed, and everything like that. And MaintainX won because it was the cleaner tool. And honestly, your folks, they really made a big difference as far as they were just really respectful and really fast, accurate, respectful. That's what we look for in a partner.
Love it. Yeah. Just as much as we focus on technology, we try to be really mindful and intentional with our people side of the business too. That's the human part of it, right? So
Yeah.
Yeah. Someone else asked here if there's a feature in MaintainX that you haven't implemented and wanted to know why. you briefly talked about it on, how you didn't start using parts out of the gate. You weren't, that was something you held
Yeah.
back. Is there anything else that the,
Um,
and you talk about reports, dashboards?
yeah. Actually, I got one. I don't know how much we'll use like the PO system in it, just because of our other
Okay.
ERP systems and everything like that. So that one is to be determined as far as if people are going to be, if they can relieve inventory from a work order, or for parts and whatnot. We probably really don't. I won't be cutting POs with that tool, just because of our current like infrastructure. But we'll play around with it. We'll see how it looks, see what people want to do, if it makes sense or not. But that one we probably won't touch. If we were
Then I've
smaller, we
got
would.
it. Yeah, that makes sense. And part of it, I think, is part of is maybe a testament to your experience in knowing that if you want to roll something out, at scale, the more things you touch up front that are involved as part of the requirements can become friction points that hurt, slow it down. If you have to go
Yeah.
in and replace another process over here and move someone else's cheese, and then that creates more potential bottlenecks to getting to where you're trying to go, right?
Yeah, agree, 100%.
Yeah. See, we've got somebody who's asked us, safety's mentioned a few times to be implemented in any pre-shift inspections, safety checks, for the operators to input into MaintainX.
Yeah, so we build safety in every procedure, so that way it's always, perform your lockout takeout procedure, whether it's air, electricity, so on and so forth, right? Depending on what type of piece of equipment it is. The sites that are really into MaintainX, they can even customize and make it so it's theirs. Go to box 2A, flip this breaker. You can even put in the notes, make sure you have this safety gear on. You can put links in it too, which is really cool because you can put videos on how to do something safely as well. But yeah,
Yeah.
we do that. In terms of daily pre-ship inspections, some of our sites do it in MaintainX, some do not. Just like I said, being an open book and being completely transparent, I'm more, because we don't have every person in a plant on MaintainX, right? We've got our maintenance professionals and then we have some operators. We don't, it does tend to clog up the work order system, putting dailies in there. So instead we post them on the
Yeah.
machines. We still have the dailies available within MaintainX. We still build the procedures and everything like that, but we tend to post them on the machine and do something more just like, check boxes and things like that, just because they don't need a tablet. It doesn't need to get installed on their system. Or they don't need a company provided phone. Like, so that is a hurdle. In a perfect world, I would love for everybody to have a company provided phone. It's got MaintainX right on there. They do their dailies right
Yeah.
in it. We have those processes in place for some of our other systems, and all drivers have driver phones and can do pre-shifts on that through a different system. But yeah, that's that's at least how I've been doing it. So it's kind of like a hybrid approach, just because I don't want maintenance professionals to be turned off to the tool because they have 45 dailies they have to click through on it that someone else is already doing, and that way they can get to the weeklies and do the other things, right? The last thing we want to do is not be respectful to the time of the maintenance techs and be able to they get sucked into just clicking boxes and whatnot, because that's not what we're trying to accomplish.
Right. I think it's a good call out. I see some folks that try to digitize processes that were broken before, and instead of thinking about how do we make this, get the information we need without overwhelming them with busy work that doesn't add value to either side. Another question here, I think it'll be relatively simple to answer. They asked it in a strange way. I'll try to fix it for them. It's like, how long did it take you to implement MaintainX? For reference, our company has 1,500 assets, but I don't think the volume of assets was maybe the consideration for rolling out MaintainX. Was it? It was in the length of time. It was more a function of sites and people, or maybe it was assets was a consideration. How did you think about it?
It's a little bit of both. So, like I was saying, we're about 90. We've been doing it for about a year and a half. And truth be told, like, I have many other projects that I'm on, so I have to put this into certain chunks of my project or in my schedule. And so between our philosophy and our strategy, my available time and whatnot, those are some of the factors. But when we roll out the smaller chunks, it is we do have quite a few assets at some sites, and across the whole company, I'd have to look at what our total count is, but I guess it's a little bit of both, right? Like we knew we had a lot to lift at every single location, and we just wanted to make sure it went well. That's kind of the whole iterative approach and whatnot. Doing it in chunks. If we had a super site, and say we had a just like like you see like the TMMKs and whatnot that are just gigantic, you've seen from space. I probably, if I was there, I would have done it in chunks and departments and things like that. It's just, I think, way more manageable. 1,500 assets, it's a lot. That's going to take you a while to get in there, but that's why I would do an iterative approach so people can start using it. But that's just my 2 cents too. Without, obviously, it's easy for me to say something and not know any of the backstory, the company, the challenges, or anything like that.
That's why I said it's a tricky question to over. Yeah, you can kind of give. I think that found it, like that framework you shared is great. To over analyze it, it would probably require a little more information. So, or to give them a more perfect answer. And then the last question I want to kind of leave you with here and the folks with is like, what advice would you give to other organizations considering a large scale implementation of a maintenance solution? And then there's sort of a part 2 to this. Someone's question was like, looking back, would you have done anything different in your implementation process?
That's a good question. Okay, so starting with the first part of the question, just kind of summarize some of the things we talked about, right? Roll it out in waves. Don't try to do everything at once. Make sure the users are happy to the best that you can, right? Define where you need to standardize and where you don't need to. Only standardize what you have to. Everything else, leave it open source, so that way you give room for creativity. So yeah, those were kind of like the big things that as far as the themes that I would say, as far as rolling it out. As far as things we didn't do right the first time, there's always room for improvement. I guess this is more of a like wishful thinking item. I do wish we were able to have a bigger team on implementation to be able to just make these procedures ridiculous, like in terms of, in a good way, right? Like some of our procedures are very like basic, and some of them are very, got pictures, we got videos, we got everything, right? I wish every procedure was like that when we went to go live. It's just from a capacity standpoint, sometimes some processes don't require it. That would have been really, really cool if we could have been able to do that. It just would have taken us just a colossal amount of time, and we had a very small team who was willing to essentially help build the initial set of procedures for that. That's one thing that would have been really cool to be able to do different. And but I don't know. Honestly, everything's been going pretty good. I'm trying to think of, mistakes we made right out of the gates. We stuck with our naming convention. We, actually, I got one. So in the beginning, when we'd ask for users, like how many users at a site needs, there's the requester license, right? And that has a different pay structure than like a full user, right? So
requesters are free. Yeah.
Yeah. So I shouldn't have recommended requesters, and I should have just told people about the requester portal. That is actually, because the requester portal saves a lot of work, especially if you have like IT processes you have to go through to get users set up in your SSO environment. And so right out of the gates, I was like, yeah, what would you like? Would you like this view? Would you like this type of user? And I would give this like full options because that's what we were playing around with. But at the end of the day, I've moved to just going, what full users do you need? Because now you guys have, you have the hyperlinked dashboard. So like a like view only license isn't really necessary. So that makes my job easier. But then also just requesters, people coming and going and so on and so forth. I think requester portal, way better idea, much easier for people to use. That is one place that you could say that I goofed up on the front end, or I guess I learned, right? Because what we did worked, but this way I think is just easier implementation wise, less management, less people on IT having to do actions. It's just smoother all across the board. Yeah.
That makes sense. And thanks for that. And I think someone had asked if, how long you took for the implementation as well, but you sort of said you're still in the middle of it. You're still doing kind of the final. Yeah. So
some sites have been live for over a year. They've been, some have been like a year and a half about. Some sites are going live in a week. So there's everybody in each part
Ongoing
of the
process.
process essentially along the way. But yeah, we've had some, people have been using it for like over a year though at a lot of our sites. We did some kind of big implementations right out of the gates with people that were hungry for it. So we're like, let's get it in their hands, and then we can get some good feedback as well, and they're happy.
Love it. Thank you all so much, or thank you again, Matt, and thank you for everyone else who's stayed with us here today. Excited. This was an awesome chat. Really excited. I wanted to do a quick couple of call to actions here for folks. We've got our MaintainX Academy here. If you haven't had a chance to check that out, definitely take a look. We got our community. If you're not part of that yet, definitely join. Would love to have you be part of that. And if you want to learn more about MaintainX, ask specific questions, feel free to book some time with us, and we'd be happy to chat. Thank you all so much. We'll see you all at the next masterclass, and round of applause here for Matt. You were a fantastic guest today. Hopefully folks got to learn a little bit more about what we're, how you've been able to drive that standardization. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Honestly, I love talking shop. If anybody wants to chat, look me up on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to have a conversation.
Awesome.